Now, joining us for more on the fate of this, I want to bring in Brett Pulley, who interviewed James Murdoch last year. He's our Bloomberg reporter, but also Reed Phillips, a media investment banker with DeSilva and Phillips. But Brett, let me just ask you this first. What do you think is going to happen with the board today, the board meeting?
Well, all indications are James will stay put for now. Some of the top shareholders really support James. I mean, James, by all accounts, has done a great job at BSkyB. Crispin Odie.
Up to now, some would say.
Up until now. And the issue is really how politicized this becomes and, of course, how much the fallout continues.
Right. If
James really gets swept up or continues to get swept up in the News of the World scandal, then they have an issue on their hands. You know, Crispin Odie, who owns about 2.7% of BSkyB, and also happens to be James's former brother-in-law. He was married to Rupert's oldest daughter. He has come out in recent days in support of James, making the point that James has done a great job. But he does also say that he'd like to see News Corp loosen their grip on the board at BSkyB.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
So then that leads me to this question for Reed then. I mean, in the seems like unlikely scenario, but if that were to happen, that James was asked to step down or at least step back from BSkyB, what would that mean for the Murdoch empire?
It would send a very bad signal, I think. It would suggest that there's a feeling that James hasn't, testified properly in front of Parliament, and that there's pressure that they were unable to kind of deal with, and so I think as Brett said, I think it's highly unlikely that he'll be asked to step down. I think that would be the worst outcome by far for both News Corp and for James.
And there are questions, right, about whether or not his testimony last week, really, I'm trying to think of the word without sounding, jives, right, with what others have said. I mean, there are questions about the veracity of his comments, right?
Absolutely. You know, the big issue is that he's been adamant about not realizing early on that this was a widespread issue, and now some former employees of News International are coming out with evidence, and there's evidence, particularly in an email, that indicates that James may have been informed earlier on that this was a widespread problem.
We were just showing some of the board members. Give me your take a little bit on who they are and why they would be so supportive.
Well, as you pointed out, these board members are clearly people who are there because of News Corp's stake in the company. David Evans is a longtime News Corp executive, ran Fox Television, ran satellite operations for Rupert in Asia and Europe. David DeVoe is the CFO there. He's been over 25 years on the financial side with Rupert. There's Arthur Siskin, who's on the News Corp board, as well as the BSkyB board, Tom Mockridge, who, of course, is now the new CEO of News International, replacing Rebecca Brooks, and is a very close ally of James Murdoch. And, of course, James speaks for himself. You know, it's interesting, in 2003, when James was appointed CEO of BSkyB, there was a big uproar among BSkyB shareholders. He was only 30 years old. They thought he was too young. They thought it was nepotism. And Rupert said then, when a shareholder stood up and said they didn't like it, said, if you aren't happy with the direction of the company, then sell your shares. So it really underscores how adamant Rupert is about having things his way at this company.
Right, and standing by, his lieutenants. Reed, I think the last time you were on, you had said that there is a possibility that News Corp may come back one day and try to bid again for the entire rest of the stake of BSkyB. After seeing what happened last week, you still believe that?
I still think there's a chance that could occur in the future. It just depends. It depends on the investigation and the outcome of the investigation. I think if James is exonerated, News Corp, also is, somewhat exonerated. I think that is a likely outcome. I think it's a much less likely outcome, if the investigation goes the other way. But again, I think, and back to the point of the board really being in a position to protect James. A lot of people don't recall that he was preceded as chairman by his father, Rupert. And so Rupert has, I'm sure, a lot of influence on all of the board members, not just the board members who are still have links to News Corporation.
Outside of this, though, Reed, I mean, as a banker who's done a lot of media deals, seeing what has happened with this scandal and how it's plagued, the Murdochs, is anyone going to want to do business with them, be in bed with them again?
I think so. Again, I think I think business people are going to view it as kind of an isolated scandal. I think where they'll run into problems are organizations that just have very high editorial integrity standards, and they may be less inclined in the short term to do business with News Corp. Yeah.
Brett, what is your reporting telling you?
Well, I agree. I think the other issue is going to be heavily regulated industries. We can see the political nature of this entire issue there. And that's an issue for them going forward. And in fact, one of the things that's kind of looming out there is a possibility that this thing continues to unravel and Ofcom decides that they, in fact, are not fit enough to hold this license to own BSkyB.
Right.
And my goodness, I don't know what happens at that point. Does it become, does that create an opportunity for someone else to invest in BSkyB? That's one of the big questions, and if so, who?
Well, let Reed answer that. I mean, what do you?
Well, I think it certainly could. There are other players in Europe that would be pleased to own the UK market, that they, is comparable to what they already own in Germany and France. So I think that's possible. But again, I think, News Corp traditionally has maintained a pretty solid grip on most of their assets, and the only thing that would really throw them off is if there was government intervention regarding the license.
Right. If that were to go against them. But wow, what a hit that would be for News Corp then. Guys, thank you so much, Brett, and also to Reed Phillips for joining us on James Murdoch. We're going to get more on the outcome of that board meeting, but still ahead.